I don't believe in the idea of people just want to be offended. I don't see value in that. I think that's an easy way to dismiss lots of arguments. And I've had that certainly thrown in my face of like, you're just offended because you want to be offended. You've built an industry out of being offended. I'm like, there are easier ways to make money. Social media is media. It actually dictates what stories get covered, and these controversies, they're not protests generally. They're not people with picket signs, right? It's tweets. I don't know what the future is in terms of like how that's going to impact us and whether it's going to survive and if technology will shift again. I do think that it is not a good thing to have an argument with anyone, to have an opinion that is not informed. And that's what I see a lot of. I see people reading headlines and not reading the articles, and I see the headlines being sensationalized more than ever, being clickbait, and people taking that headline and drawing inferences. That's where I see like our communication, our society, our democracy breaking down, and that we don't spend the time to learn from each other. Like I made a documentary, The Problem with Apu, and people who saw it like generally liked it, and people who didn't see it hated it. And that makes no sense to me. How can you hate this thing? Because I assume this is what the article is. The title of the movie is The Problem with Apu. You have a problem with it, it must be these things. It doesn't matter that most of the arguments I get have been addressed in the film, because no one's going to watch the film. And my assumption is that it would spark an interesting conversation, and that was foolish of me. Because that means everyone's on the same page and willing, in good faith, to have a discussion. Things aren't done in good faith anymore. These arguments aren't good faith arguments. They're just yelling. I do stand-up because I love stand-up. I have loved stand-up and I've done stand-up well before I cared about the world. I was 17, I grew up in Queens, New York, sheltered by diversity. I had no sense of what I believed, but I loved comedy and I liked making people laugh. So comedy precedes my political sensibilities. I didn't have any, I was 17. So post 9/11, all of a sudden, I'm in Maine going to college. I went to Bowdoin College, and I was a minority in the truest sense for the first time. Being in Maine and then 9/11 happening and feeling othered in a way I've never felt before, that's what shaped the political point of view, and I wanted to infuse what I felt about the world into my stand-up, because I feel like that's coming from an honest place. And I felt like the comics I liked the most were coming from an honest place, be it like Chris Rock or Margaret Cho or Richard Pryor. I mean, there's a long list of people, Lenny Bruce, Carlin, people who like spoke truth to power. To me, like speaking truth to power is not a political act in itself when you're doing art, right? To me, when I do stand-up, I don't want to think about it as I'm doing this to make impact. I do this because I believe in it. Because I actually believe in the ideas, and here's a funny way to discuss it. It's not like I see something and say, let me put my political glasses on to analyze this politically. It's just how I see the world. It's observational to me. And if I can find people who can empathize with that, can relate to that, have similar experience, share in that catharsis of we're all in the same place, and no, you're not crazy, I'm feeling it too. If I can create those moments, I feel like I've done a good job. I'm not taken aback by the label political, but I'm aware that it's a label and it's used for branding purposes, or it's used so people understand generally what a person does. You know what I mean? Like you need something. Oh, it's a horror film. You kind of have a sense, I will be scared, and that's what it is. But to me, again, I don't see what I do as political. Like racism to me is not political. Like it is a lived condition. It is what this country is built on. That to me is not like a political thing to say. It might feel political to other people, but their unwillingness or maybe just ignorance, not wanting to learn, not learning about things that happen in the world, like that's a political act too. Not acting is political. Ignoring things is political. What you don't say is political. Your free speech rights allow you to say the things you're saying, and the free speech rights of others have them replying to you. That's just how it works. They're not censoring you. They can't censor you. They're other human beings with opinions. Like a Twitter mob is not a real mob. No one's hurting you. There's nothing that's preventing you from saying things. I mean, there are repercussions for your actions. You can't be like, well, how come I can't do whatever I want to do? We're getting denied our free speech and here are the consequences. It's all bullshit. It's not real. Lenny Bruce actually died for free speech. Like Lenny Bruce is somebody who, the police would raid his shows. There was a court case against him. Like his career got ruined. He died alone. It was incredibly sad. That's someone who died for the right to say something because the system was actively working against him. When you're involving police and courts, that's when the free speech conversation becomes, to me, more valid. Trump has been able to mobilize a base that feels like they're being oppressed and they're not being able to do whatever they want to do. And like through that like anxiety and fear and confusion, they found someone who will say whatever they want. And I feel like the similarity is true with maybe, artists who are like, I'm going to say whatever I want. I don't care. I'm sick of this outrage culture that doesn't let me say whatever I want to say. I'm going to say it, and that's what you're going to at your show. And that's fine. Do what you do. No one can define comedy for you. That does draw people. You can't deny that, like, this is part of the capitalism of comedy. People are coming to your shows because of that promise in the same way people come to my shows because they think I'll be thoughtful. It's two sides of the same coin. In any situation, capitalism finds a way of showing up. When it rains, people magically come out with umbrellas to sell.